Recording in progress. Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Hello.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Next thing on the item is a proclamation tonight. This week of September is Constitution Week, so I would like to read a proclamation, and I will introduce a guest here to come up and speak. So, whereas September 17th, 2025 marks the 238th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, whereas the Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through 23 as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Todd Deinhardt, by virtue of the authority vested in me as Mayor of the City of Woodland, State of Washington, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through 23 as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through the guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the Woodland to be affixed the second day of September of the year of our Lord 2025. Come on up. And I still have my miniature Constitution book.
Very good. I hope you read it daily. It's not as important as the Bible, but it is important. Thank you, Mayor, for reading the proclamation. I'm a representative of the Mary Walker Richardson chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and we thank you so much, Council and Mayor, for joining us and recognizing that our Constitution is precious and fragile and needs to be defended. I hope you remember that the only reason we can be here and not under guard is because of your Constitution. So I hope you will join us in defending the Constitution and remembering each year how it guarantees our precious freedoms. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming and, being a participant here every year.
Well, we appreciate you doing this for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on that proclamation from anyone on council or in the audience? All right. Citizen communication for items not on the agenda. There's nothing on there. Anybody have anything to speak about? All right. Let's move right along to agenda approval.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any issues, comments, questions about the agenda from anyone in the audience or anyone online? Council, any questions? Ms. Hogan.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Frymark,
Aye.
Councilmember Houston,
Aye.
Councilmember Friend.
Aye.
Moving into reports to City Council.
Reminder that our first high school football game is against Kalama this Friday night, and that they are having a barbecue, so it benefits the class of 2026 at the game. So bring your money, and they're having dessert too this year, so it'll be a different thing. So they'll have barbecue and dessert available to purchase.
7 p.m. at the high school. While we're at it, remember, school's in session, and we do have a new speed limit. School in session. So, again, Mr. Hall.
Yeah, I attended the Cowlitz-Wahkiakum Council of Governments meeting, and we really informative and lengthy presentation by a group called Home Ownership of Southwest Washington, I believe is the correct title. And they have done a great deal of study and have graphs and projections, whatever. If you're interested in housing, that was a good presentation. I think it's still available online, so I would recommend that. It'd be fun to. The guy that presented was from Ocean Park. He was really good, a good presenter. Probably one of the best council meetings that I've been to. So
Yeah, those meetings are, recorded, so they are out there and available.
yeah,
So-
that's a really good presentation on the subject of housing.
Okay.
So, made us look good, by the way. Seriously, and they, one of the shortfalls in the state of Washington is low-income housing. But of all the communities in the 5-county area that they covered, we are one of the leading in terms of our number of residents for low-income
Okay.
housing. So made us look pretty good.
Interesting. I will go read that or watch that video. I just wrote that down. Any other comments or questions about that meeting? Any other items from council? All right. Reports of standing committees. Public Works.
Public Works Committee met at 6 o'clock this evening and discussed the various aspects of our Public Works Department. Thanks to our director, Riley Benelli, he's doing an excellent job keeping the council informed of the day-to-day proceedings and the problems that they're having on an ongoing basis. Appreciate that, Director. First off, I want to put a shout out to water plant operator Frank Pulaski. And he completed a 2-year program that he got a certification as a water plant operator apprenticeship. Evidently, that was an accelerator program, and as you can all imagine, we want to keep and maintain qualified people in our water and sewer works on it, and it looks like we're getting that done thanks to Director. The lift stations, the ones that have got the problems mostly in the city, are numbers 3, 6, 7, and 9, and cleaning them out was finalized during the month of August, done by the middle of August. That's an ongoing problem all the time, and our Public Works Director is taking good care of it. The Pacific Avenue Sidewalk project is now complete. Thanks for getting that done. That's a lot of people looking forward to that. That's done now, and it looks like a pretty good job. Of importance to people out there in the gun club road area, the project is out for construction bid. Closes September the 11th. After that, we should have the bids in, and they'll select the appropriate one based on the most responsible bidder at the lowest price on it, and it'll be brought towards the council on the 22nd of this month for approval. I'm looking forward to that because they'll start construction shortly after that, and the window for construction is like 80 days. Hopefully the rainy weather will hold off until the end of December or even January. We all know it's going to be a rainy November, I think, that starts in October. But let's keep our fingers crossed so we can get that done. They anticipate being complete by the end of the year. And that's really good news. Waste Control is making a change in their pickup schedule starting next Monday, September the 8th. They've got new routes and new dates. So check the schedule on the city website. Evidently, a lot of information was sent out with the last bills, and there should be a specific date, and the changing of that is going to start next week. They'll get a new date perhaps on it. Maybe you'll get an old, maybe you'll keep the same date, but perhaps you might not either. So be aware, you might have to put trash cans out early. And I believe that's all, unless you have anything to add to that, Director.
I want to make sure everyone heard September 8th, the week of Monday, September 8th, which is a week from yesterday. There's a new schedule that starts for garbage pickup. This is not a City of Woodland decision. This is Waste Connections decision. They do all that. We are a pass-through. They just say this is how much it costs, and away they go. They have that right. That is how it works. They've made a decision. It is on our website. We put a schedule out there, and it lists every road, every street within the city limits of Woodland. Go on there, and it will tell you what day your garbage is. And that list on there shows the day that your garbage gets picked up. So remember the night before you'll want to put your garbage out. So, just to be clear. So for example, mine right now goes out on Wednesday nights to get picked up on Thursday. Going forward, it will be going out on Tuesday night to get picked up on Wednesday. So, lots of people have been changed, and people are wondering why. So what they're really trying to do is balance. If you look at where all the growth has happened, upriver. You go drive up Lewis River Road, there are hundreds of additional homes that are up there, and so they're trying to balance their, workload and say, hey, I can do this many cans this many cans this, and away they go. One nice thing that I've noticed with their trucks is they are all video now. So if you call and say, hey, my garbage wasn't picked up, give them your address, they can go look and say, oh no, this is what was picked up, and we can see what was dumped into the truck. It's very interesting. I mean, they've made some improvements there. Because again, I'll give you an example. My garbage didn't get picked up. They went back and looked and said, oh yeah, we lifted it up, but it got stuck in there, didn't come out, and they came out and picked it up. And they literally could say, okay, we have this, and this is what got stuck. Very interesting, and they can literally do the same routes, and it tells you GPS. If you went to the Dineharts, next house went to the Rabs, and it works its way right through. So, okay?
And it is on the water bill.
And it's on your utilities bill that comes through the city. Next month, or next council meeting, we will have a action item to whether or not we want to continue doing that billing for them, or if we want them to do their own billing.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, comments about the Public Works report? Thank you, Mr. Frymark. Moving into reports to city officers, mayor's report. I'm going to make a quick few items here because I want to get to the workshop. So first one is LTAC applications are due this Friday. We're still looking for one individual to be on the committee. They need to be part of the hotel motel industry, as it was what they will be representing. So we have one application we're looking for, but we're also looking for applications for organizations that would like to receive money out of our LTAC funds. So those are due on Friday. And that information is out on our website. Second thing is we're getting into budget season. Terry Smith is over here. She's picking up the budget from the items that I had last year. She's working on it. So we will be here towards the end of September, October, November. A lot of our city council meetings will be working on the budget, making sure that, again, we're balanced and are not raising property taxes. I have put that plug in multiple times with this team over there. We need to live within our means and continue to. Another item, Department of Ecology. I was wondering if it was going to be on the Public Works. Sometimes Riley doesn't like to brag about his organization. We received a letter from the Department of Ecology on our wastewater treatment plant. We received outstanding performance of 300 wastewater treatment plants statewide. Ours is among the top tier for operations in 2024. So I would just like to give kudos to Riley, but more importantly to the individuals that work over there in the wastewater treatment here.
Good job.
So, questions or comments on that piece? Anything you wanted to throw out there, Riley?
No, I mean, it's really just kind of shows what kind of quality and people that we have that work for the city of Woodland, especially in our treatment facilities. Very proud to work with them. They do a wonderful job. They really deserve a round of applause for as well as they do, and just goes to show what their commitment level is to the city of Woodland. Very proud.
Last item I have here is last mayor's report. I talked about filters 2 and 3, and we had a bond that was maturing. What were we going to do? Met with Peter Parker. Love the name Peter Parker. About what rates are out there. And so when we started doing some research, so let's walk through this. Filters 2 and 3, we took a $1.6 million loan out in 2023. First payment was due in 2024. It's 2.25%. Here's where we get ourselves in trouble with our auditors. That loan, and I see staff over there shaking their head at me, that loan is for 20 years. The useful life of those two filters is 10 years. We may be able to get them for a usefulness of 15 years with a little bit of change in processes and things that Riley and the team have started to implement. Technically, we are out of compliance on that Department of Ecology loan at 2.25. So then you start saying, okay, how do we get in compliant? What do we want to do? We have a bond that is matured for 1%, or I'm sorry, $1 million. We received 0.25% interest on that. So we earned $2,500 on $1 million sitting out there. We can go to the bond market. We can take a secured out there, and it would be right in that 3 to 3.5%. So you look at your 3.5% versus your 2.25, that 1% there. You know, you're looking at $10,000 to $12,000 when you look at your fees. You know, Peter and I have run the numbers. You're looking roughly $10,000 to $12,000 differential of what we would be collecting interest versus what we would be paying on that loan to pay it $1 million down. But we need to get it into compliance. So what I've directed staff to do and what we are doing is with that $1 million is we're going to pay down or see what we can do to get in compliant with that $1.6 million loan, whether it is pay the full $1 million off, whether we have to refinance, what we need to do. So that is what we're doing with that. Then we sit there and say, okay, well, if you remember the schedule we've gone through over the years, we've got around $12 to $13 million still out there in other bonds that are maturing over the life of, you know, between every 3 to 6 months is what our plan is now. We've got 90% of them in that 3.5% to 4% rate. So that $12 million still gives us a year's operating. I think it's very wise of the city to always have $1 million worth of reserves that you could go out there and you would have. Paying off this as well, when you look at grants, some of the grants that we've looked at, Riley and I and his team have talked about, you score better when you have less debt out there. So this actually will be beneficial as well. It will show, if you look through the debts that we have, we've got fire station, police station, the $5 million up there for the reservoir, these filters 2 and 3,
Rainy Well.
and the rainy well that are out there. So we've got several items that are out there. This just will remove that. We've already removed the old spruce building. So I think it helps us secure up a few things here in the city. Just any questions or comments, I want people to be aware of that. I don't want someone to say, what'd you do with that $1 million? It literally is to pay down debt. And Terry is over there, can answer additional questions. Mr. Hall.
So will that, by reducing that debt, will that get us in the, and when you say it's out of compliance, you mean that it's not gonna pay off that in that 10-year life of the?
So we have 1.6 million that we're paying over the life of 20 years. Okay, so when we pay down the $1 million, we can, there's no early termination fee. So
Okay.
that's not an issue. So
we'd be paid off before that 10-year life.
Correct. So, but again, because it's a 20-year life loan, that's where we need to work and make sure with Department of Ecology to say, hey, we made $1 million principal payment. Does that get us in compliance, or do we have to refinance it and do another round? That's our question that I'm trying to find out.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, it's sort of like our home mortgages. You know, some of them I prepay and it keeps my mortgage payment the same. You know, I just have early termination, or does it recalculate annually what my payment is and keeps the amortization over those 20 years? So, okay, I will certainly return information on that, but that's the direction we're going. Okay. that's what I had from the mayor's mess. Any questions, comments?
So we're not sure if the Rule 78 applies to that or not, that if we pay off $1 million worth of principal and keep paying the same periodic payments on it, it should shorten the life by, considerably.
100%. It shortens the life.
Yeah.
However,
Well under 20 years.
but your life, your loan amortization is still a 20-year. I don't know if it recalculates and says, okay, instead of it being a $72,000 payment, now does it go down to a $15,000 payment? Or does it stay on that $72,000 payment and just reduces it?
I would think the latter.
Again, but I want to make sure and confirm that before all of a sudden we make a payment and they say, oh, well, you still haven't, got into terms. Terry, anything you want to throw on that?
By doing so, then it just keeps us out of the water with the state auditor's office because they would look into that technical terminology. So we want to make sure that we're clean and clear for the audit. So we have to check with the bank to see that particular amortization or not to make sure that it's going to fall into line correctly. And then if it does, then we're in the good. We just don't know yet till we get that conversation out there.
And if we're in the good, our budget will be built though, that we're still making that same payment so that it gets paid off early. We're not going to all of a sudden budget a lower, so we will budget that higher. Okay? And that payment does come out of the water fund. Okay? Questions or comments? Upcoming events, park board meeting. So that is an external organization that the city helps facilitate with. There's community members that are part of that. If you want to be part of the park fund or park board, feel free to attend 3 p.m. on the 11th, September 11th. Then there's a city council meeting and a planning commission meeting coming up on the 25th. City council is the 15th and the planning commission is the 25th. Okay? All right. Moving into consent items.
Approved to move the minutes of August 2025.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any questions or comments about those minutes? Ms. Hogan.
Councilmember Friend,
Aye.
Councilmember Houston,
Aye.
Councilmember Frymark,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy, Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Moving into action item B, approve vouchers for August 2025, second half.
Make a motion to approve
Second.
action item B.
I have a first and a second. Any questions from the community about the vouchers for the August 2025? Any questions for? Huh?
I was just curious what there's one for Grover Lasky for $875. Is that for medical or?
Yes. He's a LOF 1. We're required to pay medical.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Okay. And that, again, he used to be a police officer here. That is not as a result of him being a mayor. I want to be clear on that.
Yes.
The mayor does not get medical, any additional retirement. That is purely from his police responsibilities. Okay? Any other questions or comments before we take a vote? Ms. Hogan.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy, Councilmember Frymark,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Houston,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Friend.
Aye.
The ayes have it. It is now 7:26, and we will move into workshop. Mr. Goddard, it is all you, sir.
Thank
you. I will do my best to make this quick for you because some of you have heard this multiple times. So, the Planning Commission has did a workshop the week before last, and they will be making a recommendation at a public hearing at the next Planning Commission meeting. I just wanted to give you a chance to see the information that I presented to them ahead of time.
Hey, Travis, during that, do you mind, as we go through this,
Yep.
pointing out the issues and the questions that they had there? I mean, there was...
I've got that slide in here. Yep.
Because there was a little bit of dialogue and conversation between a couple of the, planning commissioners.
So part of the issues that were raised by the Planning Commission is they wanted to know exactly why we did it the way we did. So if you remember, those of you who are here, I believe it was November of 2024, I came to you and I asked, do you want me to continue to do an analysis and have the numbers change every month as more data gets collected? Or do you want me to take a snapshot of how many projects are in the pipeline, how many houses or building projects do we expect, and what do we expect the population to look like? And I was given the direction that you wanted me to take a snapshot in December or November of last year, and that's how I built the comprehensive plan. So the numbers haven't been changing over time, but I wanted to let you know why I came down the way I did. And the comprehensive plan, essentially, I've been touting this as a revisit to the direction that was given by this council in 2015. They did a lot of work on the vision and direction, setting policies and goals, what they want the city of Woodland to look like in 20 years, and we're 10 years into that. And so this time around, I didn't necessarily reinvent the wheel. I just had a lot of meetings and discussions about, okay, this is the policies that were set at the time. Is this still the spirit of Woodland? And we did a lot of vision discussions, and we talked about what did you like, what don't you like, and what are the things you'd like to see in Woodland. So that kind of adjusted a bit of the language, but really it's kind of the soul of Woodland is the same as what it was 10 years ago, theoretically, and we'll talk about that. But when we talk about growth projections, we updated the sewer plan a few years ago, and we used a 2.35% growth rate, and we estimated a 2035 population of 9,274.
Travis?
Yep.
Is that a population of people or
a population of people?
Okay, I just want to be clear
Yes.
with people.
Yep. So
because again, we only have roughly 2,200, meters, but 6,500 people. So
yes, and the water plan has a 2.3% growth rate, but their 20-year projection only goes out to 2039. But their population ended up being bigger, 10,157. Now our park plan was just updated a couple years ago, and it has a 2040 projection using 2.3% growth, and that's 10,621. So we have all these different plans that get updated at different dates, and you keep running the statistics, and so you can see just between 15, 19, and 20, we already have a pretty big range of differences between those numbers. Our comprehensive plan, we knew that the number was changing, but the finite amount of land that we have is dictating that 2024 number that I asked you, do you want me to take a snapshot, figure out where we are, and where I think we're going to be using my best professional judgment. And so we figured out, okay, we have a land capacity of about 8,284 citizens, and that's within our 20-year growth plan. But I had to go to a much smaller growth percentage to get us there. And what that basically says is we're going to run out of land before we get to the 9,200, the 10,000, the 10,000 plus. We're just going to run out of land unless we make some changes.
within the city limits, we estimate there's roughly 30 acres of buildable land.
And so Cowlitz County is going through their process, and they are looking at a 0.75 to 1% growth rate, so it's actually smaller than ours based upon their statistical analysis. The difficult problem with that is they were looking at giving us about 20% of their housing allotment, which is about 2,200 housing units. And we only have about 2,300 housing units, so they think we're going to double. But from their point of view, it's a 1% growth rate. The fact that we're going to double, it's just part of the statistical gray water that they're not going to worry about. They have since made an adjustment and gone to about a 50% of their growth is going to occur in Woodland, and so they came up with 2,000 housing units. So essentially, they think our planning should be for 11,000 or 11,800, which is vastly different. What our planning is based upon our existing land supply. So what that tells us is the city or the county is going to have to give us some urban growth boundary, or we're going to have to significantly increase the density of development that occurs within the city. So I'm kind of juggling all of these balls in the air, trying to keep my eye on the direction you gave me in 2024. Now, what I also did here is I took a look at a couple issues from a statistical point of view, and that is, so in the sewer plan, for example, the 2.35% growth rate, it tells us how many units of existing capacity we have in our water supply, or in this case, the sewer supply, which means that if we look at my projected growth to 8,200, the number of units that are going to result, we should have additional sewer capacity at the end of that growth if we follow our sewer plan, including our capital facilities investment. The problem we have is looking at this top dark box, that's assuming 2.48 people per household, which is our historical number of people who live in an average household. So there's a lot of single households, there's a lot of 3 and 4, 5, 6 families. So on average, it's 2.5 people per housing unit.
And that number is increasing.
Actually, that number is statistically decreasing.
Okay, hold on a sec. When I say it's, if you look at the city of Woodland and what is happening here, it's increasing.
Yeah.
That number. But statistically, what they're telling us is that number is going down. So do we want to go with statistics of what, globally, macro, or do we want to look at micro? But right now we're using a 2.48.
And that's a great point, because what I should have pointed out from the very beginning, one of my favorite sayings, I mentioned this to the Cowlitz County Council or Planning Commission the other night, and that is statistics are all fine, especially when you're dealing with big numbers. You can do relatively accurate predictions using good statistics. The problem is once you apply that on a very small scale, the numbers break down. So the 1% for Cowlitz County, the big number of 110,000 people, 15% is no big deal. But when you apply it to the city of Woodland, that 15% of growth from the county doubles our population. And for them, it's a statistical error. For us, it's a significant impact to the community. And if we're looking at the long-term goals of the Growth Management Act, your biggest challenge is how do you keep the character of Woodland while we're meeting the goals of growth projection and planning for population growth. And so the problem is the numbers don't always work out, no matter how much I mess with them. The numbers are what the numbers are. And what the mayor is pointing out is, on the average in Washington state, the household size is heading to 1.9. There are less kids, there are less married couples, there are more single parent households, and so the number of people per household is just going down. And so ultimately that significantly impacts how many housing units you need. And so if we're getting mandates from the state to plan for certain housing sizes, that's going to affect how it affects our planning. So these are all the issues that I'm wrestling with. So what I'm pointing out here is we actually have sewer plan capacity, water plan capacity, park plan. We actually have a lot of capacity because we have Scott Hill Park and the property out in the floodway, and so we're constantly looking at this. Our comprehensive plan shows that we actually do not have enough land for projected growth, especially if you're using the county number. And so these numbers are available on the website if you want to take a look at it, but you get the idea. So why is it so difficult to predict housing? Well, I've talked a couple of those issues. First of all, the state does their simple statistical analysis, and basically what they say is, oh, Woodland's going to grow at 2.7%. So even with our numbers over time, 2.35, 2.3, 2.3, 1.15, Cowlitz is looking at 1 or 3/4%. According to the state, oh, the number is easy, it's 2.7% growth rate. No idea how they got there, but apparently that's what the number says. Now, what I did is I charted all the individual projections that were in all of our different planning documents, and that's what these lines represent. So you can see some of those are extremely high. And for example, some of our documents, our older documents said by 2025 we'd have over 10,000 people. We're still at 6,500, so we're nowhere near that top line. Now, what we're looking at is 6575, and essentially the documents that we had talked about, the sewer plan, water plan, expected us to be between 6240 and 84. So we're in our planning band, but we're really at the low end, and that's just kind of the reality of what's shown up on the ground. Now,
and his scale makes that growth look huge there.
Yes, yes. So
over the course of 10 years, I mean, you've gone up.
Yeah. So
what's our population right now?
About 6550, 6570.
We call
I
it
think.
roughly 6,500 is what we do when we talk about numbers, and when we talk about meters and everything, we usually about 2,200.
Yeah. So we have kind of all these different moving numbers. The actual number is 6575. So what it shows is the majority of our local planning projections are a lot closer than the ones that are given to us by the State Office of Financial Management. So we're nowhere near the higher or the middle or even below their lowest state estimate. Now, why is that? Part of it is because we are such a small community, we have this whiplash effect. We had 53 housing units added in 16, 17, 54, 2018, 24 unit, 27 units, 24 units, 7 units, 4 units, 0 units. And then you'll notice I switched to permits instead of certificates of occupancy, because we issued 23 permits, and growth is going crazy because these subdivisions are just going out of style and traffic is getting terrible. We issued 33 permits. Of those permits, only 17 units are actually of families living in them or able to be occupied. So they might be up for sale, and if they haven't been sold, there's not even a family living there.
So let me interject here, because Mr. Simpson, he's not here, but he would love to be part of this conversation. He and I had a conversation at City Hall here a couple weeks ago. And so I asked Travis to put this in here. As we look at all the growth and what, Clark and Cowlitz want us to put in our growth here, if you look and you hear people on around town, you read social media, and you talk about, what's going on, why are we building all these houses, yada, 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 okay? You can see here, there's less than 200 here in Woodland. I'm not pointing over here to my friend Carol, but her family lives up river 9 miles, where my wife's family has, done a lot of, development. There's a couple hundred homes right there, literally. And you go out, Hayes Route, there are a lot of development and a lot of homes that have gone outside of us. And these people are driving through our community. They're using our businesses and restaurants, and I welcome all that, and I love having them be part of our community. They aren't paying any of our impact fees. They are not. So when they say, well, what are you doing for, the traffic and the congestion? Well, hold on a second. Our little bit of gas tax that we get, not directly to us, that gets funneled through the state, comes to us, and the little bit of sales tax that may be used here, we get that money. We don't get any money from their home being built for our impact of roads, our impact to our water, sewer. They're not using our water and sewer, but our parks, when you see Horseshoe, okay? So that's why I say we can go down a whole conversation. It's important here. This slide is, when people say all this growth in Woodland, these 300 homes, these subdivisions, these are landowners. They have a right to do what is on their property. How can we look at them and say, because you're inside the city limits, you can't build on your property, but oh wait, you live outside the city limits, the county has given everybody permission to go out there in their 2 acre and 5 acre parcels. Do you see what I'm saying? I just want people aware that we haven't just gone crazy inside the city limits. It's, this is what we got. And that's also why I look at staff, and they hear it every week at staff meeting, that impact fees are a once in a lifetime opportunity that we as our community have. It won't happen in my lifetime again, you know, that we get this kind of money. And so it's not going to be, let's piss and dime the money around. It's going to be in funds, and it's going to be large investments that go towards our community, and it will be dialogue with council and the community to say, hey, is this how we want to spend our funds, and does this make sense, and is this the future that we want for Woodland? I will get off my soapbox here that you all hear every Wednesday morning.
So the reason why I think this is an interesting slide and the information is interesting is because we have about 380 lots that have been approved through the subdivision process and since 2022, because it kind of happened, this big gulp of subdivisions came in during COVID. Kind of developers and engineers were looking for stuff to keep themselves busy. So we went from this feast to famine, and now it seems like we're back to feast, but we're not even up to the 2016-2017 growth spurt, and this may be a 5-year growth spurt before we eat up all of those lots that get built on, and that's before any additional comes in. And so with our given capacity or land, finite amount supply of vacant land, it's going to be a lot harder for us to kind of achieve that without going to higher densities. And that's issues that we are having discussions with the Planning Commission, because if you don't want to expand the urban growth boundary and you don't want to annex land, you as the council will have the opportunity to deny annexations. And it will affect the community in different ways, and really the comprehensive plan and the policies that are in there are kind of that guide to you. So you'll have your internal moral compass, but you'll also be able to point at this document. So I encourage you to read it, because there will be a day when you have a property owner who's asking you to annex them or to make zoning changes and comprehensive plan changes that you may or may not have an opinion on.
So today, do we have any urban growth area that we can annex, or does it still, we'd have to get it from the county?
So we do, and I can show you there, it's on the map, but annexation is completely voluntary. You have to have, I believe it's 60% of the ownership of an area request annexation, and in which case, so if it's one big landowner, the council can sweep up some smaller pieces with it against their will, but that would be entirely up to you. And typically that's kind of to get over the islands of county that are surrounded by city. The council has that opportunity to bring in other stuff, but it's the majority of that is driven by applicant willingness.
And it's by land mass, not by residents?
It's done by value. Okay. So if you have a big piece of property with nothing on it, you may only be 2% of the value, and the guy next door with the McMansion is going to bully you around and you'll never get to annex if you're together. Now you can bring in your property by yourself, and it may be a big piece of property with zero value, but since you own 100% of it, you can request an annexation.
One clarification, all right, you said it there with, your request. You can't just come in and say, hey, to the city, I would like to be annexed, have a good day. No, they request, they can, and then council would approve that. It goes to the planning commission and comes up through council here. Again, council though can also say, hey, direct staff and can say, we should look at annexation, let's look and see what we want to go. So again, there's lots of things that go with annexation, sewer, water,
Okay, so the Planning Commission brought up some minor grammar edits and some comments they wanted me to look at. They also talked about the housing numbers and the projects that are in the pipeline. They want me to update those numbers since 2024, now that we actually have recorded subdivisions and building permits pending. It's not that big of a deal for me to update those numbers, but you might see some numbers change, and I promised you up front that I wouldn't. So, but they've asked me to propose some changes to update those numbers. So depending on how policy wonkish you are, you may not even notice those. And then the other thing they wanted to talk about, and that is the RCW, so that's Revised Code of Washington, state laws that have changed that are going to require us to change our code. And so there is a document on the web page that the consultant went through our existing codes, and they've identified all the House bills and the Senate bills that are going to affect the City of Woodlands code. So for example, planning for housing in different income bands, that is actually already incorporated in the comprehensive plan. So even though it isn't something that you may have consciously done, but the analysis includes it. So that's an easy lift, because if you adopt the comprehensive plan, we'll come into compliance with that. There are some other ones that we have to do. So SEPA is the State Environmental Policy Act. There's a House bill from 22 that we still have to comply with, and basically it's to streamline the environmental review process, which shouldn't be a hard lift, but it's in there. There's a couple that are optional, and that is expedited review process, and then conversion of commercial and mixed-use buildings to multifamily. So for example, this state bill would allow us to take a property like Jana Lovejoy's property that's next door to us. She's her gallery and her law office on the ground floor and apartments upstairs. And what this law does is it gives her the option to convert the entire building to multifamily apartments or condominiums. And that may or may not be consistent with what you want for this community, which is great, because that's an optional. If you're a big community or bigger jurisdiction like Seattle, Tacoma, Vancouver, they have to include options like that in the code. But it's a tool, you don't have to. Same thing with the expedited review process. You don't have to speed things up. And frankly, compared to these big jurisdictions, we move so much faster than they do. The consultants aren't worried about us trying to shave, our process down to 100 days when we already take 45 days or 60 days. So that's kind of fluff we don't need to worry about. Now, the residential density tools, these are things that we had already drafted and it went through a first reading, but we didn't end up adopting. We are going to have to go back and revisit that to increase densities. Also, the 2-unit accessory dwelling units. We have a citizen in town who showed up at the Planning Commission meeting. He actually has a giant corner lot, and he wants to add 2 additional ADUs, but it's not in our code yet. But it is required by state law, and we're required to do it within 6 months of the adoption of the comprehensive plan. So we'll need to figure out what kind of sideboards you are comfortable with, but it is a state law and we're going to have to comply. If you don't adopt it, I will have to implement the state law, which basically means we won't have any local sideboards. It'll be me arguing with the developer as to what's reasonable, and if he doesn't agree with me, then it goes to court and we have to battle it out and figure that out. So in some of these cases, you're required to consider these things. It's going to be much easier for us to figure out those sideboards than to stomp our feet and hold our breath and pretend it doesn't exist. So just bear that in mind.
And this individual's already sent emails, walked in the front door, and has done his proposals. And so, again, Travis and I have had the conversations. We'll need to come to council with sideboards because, again, I'd rather have us, create what aligns with Washington State rather than us implement Washington State.
So these are the changes to the RCWs, and that analysis is on the comprehensive plan project page. So you're entitled, or I encourage you to look through there and see what raises the red flags and what you think you're comfortable with, because it's kind of a quick synopsis. If you want to talk about those, I'm available anytime. But that's kind of the basics of what I wanted to bring you up to today. You literally are able to call that document up, and if you want a paper copy, I can make paper copies for you, but it is available online, and it is not light reading. there's some stuff that's super interesting. I encourage you to take a look at the economic development chapter, and a lot of this growth that we're talking about, it's not necessarily residential growth. Everybody always throws shade at our residential growth, but the reality is we've had a lot of commercial and industrial development. Our economy is healthy, it's growing very well. Our jobs numbers are doing extremely well. As a matter of fact, it's almost impacting Cowlitz County's numbers. We're doing so well. And for you to take a look at that, it tells you where people are coming from when they drive here to work and where our citizens are going to work, how far the average commute is, who's making how much money, and what our most effective job categories are and what the employment numbers are. A lot of interesting information in there. So if you want to recognize how well the city is doing, the economic development chapter is really good. Also the transportation chapter, because the port did the industrial 426 acre study, there's a lot of transportation information that's available. And so instead of the generic analysis that you'll find in comprehensive plans, our chapter actually almost has way too much information, because it talks about what intersections are doing well, which intersections are challenged, kind of our next 5 years priority investments, 10-year priority investments, and then stuff we need in the next 20 years. And of course, bearing in mind that given that population discussion, traffic and the economy are not necessarily correlated to population growth, and neither is water or sewer, because if we get a Pepsi bottling factory in here, we won't be able to hook up another 100 houses, let alone another 2,000 houses, because the water investments or the water use of some industrial users have nothing to do with how much residential users use. So bearing in mind that we're trying to prepare fruits and vegetables to apples and oranges, it's not the same thing. So
the 35 acres that you say that we have buildable.
Yep.
Taking into account these people that have large lots in Woodland, and someone dies or whatever, and it changes hands.
Yep.
And they're building 4 or 5 houses on that one large lot.
Yep.
Are you referring to your lot, Carol? Are you okay with that?
I'm fine.
No, she's referring to
But
your
I've
lot.
seen it happen right around the corner from me and down the street. And so, and that's about 4 houses on that one particular lot.
Yes, so our analysis does take into that a fact. We looked at the size of the property and the value of the structures on it, because several of those had little old houses on them that they just tore down and built
Right.
4 or 5 or 6 new houses and units on it. But that's not typical in all neighborhoods, so we did factor that in, basically looking at house or structure value and property, and factored that in there, which is part of the reason why Dave wants to dive into that data a little more. But I mean, as long as you're owning your house, I can rely on you to make the decision that's best for you. So no matter how much the code changes that would allow you to build an additional house, if you plan to live there forever, you're just never going to divide it.
Right.
And so, yeah, and that's why those numbers are so akimbo.
So I don't want to speak for Dave, but one of our conversation that we went back and forth is, when you come up with, 10,000 in those, he's like, well, are we not putting enough in there? And I'm like, well, wait, Dave, you got to take a step back and say, what is the actual growth that is happening in Woodland versus the perceived? Because perception growth in Woodland, absolutely. This town looks different today than it did 30 years ago when I moved here, and it looks, much different than when my wife was born 57 years ago. But when I look and say, where are these cars, where are these individuals living, it's out in the county. And so that's why we needed to show that to Dave, and he was like, interesting. So, Mr. Houston, you had a...
Oh, I just had a question about the water system. Potentially industrial could take a lot of that capacity. Would they do something down on there, like put in some sand point wells and have a reservoir that they could fill to use water that wouldn't take away from the...
So I don't know whether Riley wants to answer that, but theoretically each development is looked at for its individual impacts. And if we determined that at any point of our system, if there was a critical failure, like for example, if we ran out of water rights, they would have to solve that problem themselves. They can't pass that on to the city and the taxpayers. So if we told them, you need to build $1 million filtration system and $1 million reservoir, that's a business decision. If they can't afford it and it doesn't pencil out, well then go to Ridgefield, go to Kalama, go to Longview. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that, I do get approached by multiple industries that are looking for 1 million plus gallons per day. We have about 3 million gallons per day per water rights currently that we have to kind of juggle with. As far as a industry coming in and putting in a well system, anything over 5,000 gallons per day is considered to need a water right. There is a moratorium on the Lewis River Basin for any new water rights, so they're not, basically you can't tap in if you're going to use over 5,000 gallons per day, which is pretty easy when you're talking industry standard.
Yeah.
Now, as far as protecting our current water rights, we've been reached out to by surrounding areas for attachment to city water, and that's where we have to kind of isolate that for future development within the city. So we're really regulated on who will allow to attach, but we do get sought out by heavy industrial users,
So
chip factories, things like that.
So the Daikin District doesn't have any like water rights that they could release to if they want to.
Right, so the only thing you'll look at for water rights is who has existing water rights in the bottoms, like Waltz Meats, Sagawa's has water rights attached to
Like
Horseshoe Lake.
Peterson's pulled
Yep,
from the Columbia.
and transfer of water rights is a whole nother story. How much they've utilized in the past 5 years is basically what they can transfer if they were ever to sell or develop on those properties. The Department of Ecology usually takes a pretty big hit on water rights because there is a moratorium in the Lewis River Subbasin. So the water rights that we have now is the water rights that we have to look forward to if we ever did annex or expand the UGA. So that's another thing to keep in mind is everybody wants to do an expansion, but we have to look at our water right capacity. We have 3 million gallons per day. That's as far as we can go currently.
Thank you.
Does everyone understand when we say water rights capacity? That is what we have coming out of the Lewis.
The maximum they can pull, right?
That we can pull. Yep.
So do we get can you get water rights for the Columbia?
So where we are, we're considered the Lewis River Basin. The Columbia River is same attached water rights. We're just in an area where they're not allowing any new water rights to be allocated.
Okay.
So once we're at capacity, we're at capacity. We do have a outstanding application in for new water rights since I believe early 2000, 2002 for an extra 10,000 acre feet per year. Unfortunately, we keep that application open on a yearly basis. We just keep renewing that. If we ever did try to pursue that, obviously we would have to show, we're tapped out in current water rights. There's a huge need for it, but since there's a moratorium, it's very unlikely that we'll actually receive those. But we keep those valid in that application open in case there's ever some sort of release of water rights that we can then, have an option to acquire.
When he says option to acquire, let's say use the right word, purchase.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. Like I said, you're better off looking for current water rights and attaching, like Waltz Meats, Sagawa's onto the water system, so we can then purchase those water rights from them to add to our capacity needs.
That makes sense. So, okay.
I find it strange that in a state that probably has more waterfall and more water availability per person, that we have such strict guidelines. I think I'm missing something here. There's more rainfall in the state of Washington than, by probably a factor of 10 than we could utilize.
And it's easy to look at rainfall and do the comparison, but what they're worried about is during drought seasons, and we're pulling off the Lewis River. So that's a huge impact to the Lewis River, what actually flows down the Lewis River. So they're not really concerned about the fall and winter months when we get heavy rainfall, but it's the summer months when we go through drought.
Okay, I'm not quite clear on this 2,200 units. They want us to build 2,200 more units within the existing city limits as it's, well, that we have now. Is that correct?
So that is something that Cowlitz County is going to have to wrestle with, because it is their job to allocate where they think the growth is going to occur and where they want it to occur, and theoretically where they're going to encourage it to occur. And if they want it to occur within the city of Woodland, you're under no obligation to increase densities to anything 4 times, 5 times, which is theoretically what it would take on the 30 acres we have left. You'd have to have 5, 6, story apartment buildings to accommodate that number of units. That's kind of unrealistic, so they're going to have to recognize that they're going to have to expand the urban growth boundary. And the question is where? Up Green Mountain Road, in which case you're going to have massive road, water, and sewer costs to get up there, versus up Lewis River. Well, there's, 100 5-acre parcels that are going to have exponential costs to try and develop up that direction, versus out in the bottoms. Do you go out Dyke Access Road, in which case Riley and his team have to plan for water and sewer improvements in that direction, versus if it's south of Horseshoe Lake, that's a totally different set of pipes and pumps and issues that they need to deal with. So the county, in some sense, is going to have to start making some really important decisions. And I'm at those meetings, but ultimately my opinion is, for what it's worth, just one government employee among the C that are at these meetings that may or may not be giving input. So whether or not I'm successful at that, I continue to write these poke the bear letters, and I'm now getting invited to the meetings, but whether or not I'm representing the city very well, that's your opinion.
I'm not impressed by what the county wants at all. I think it's impractical. I personally don't want the city to change like that so fast. Acquiring land that makes it very expensive to extend the infrastructure, such as up the hill, I think that's a no-brainer. We can't do that. That's just too cost prohibitive. Going upriver, maybe a little bit, yeah, sure. To do any of that, though, anything, my gut feelings, if we have a few hundred, 3 or 4, 500 maybe, unit increases in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be lucky, because that'll be another 1,000, 1,500 people without any new land. I don't want the city to change like that. I'm not sure about anybody else, but I would be definitely against. I think we need to push back on them real hard. That just sounds unrealistic.
And the other thing I want to point out, and that is ultimately the decision lies with the 7 of you up there. They can allot us 2,900 units, and if you don't want to annex, you don't have to annex. This is a 20-year growth projection. If we build out our land in the next 5 years, there's going to be 15 years where there's no land left to develop. That's a policy decision. I will hang around and process permits, but if no permits come in the door, then that's a policy decision.
Say we would annex out Lewis River Road. What do you do about all those people that have wells already?
So our code specifically says that if you are within our service area and you're within, I believe it's 300 feet of a line, then 200 feet, then you are obligated to connect, but there are certain circumstances where it may not be until your septic system fails and then you need to hook up. And so I think we're dealing with the mobile home court down there by the Great Sand Pit.
Just before Slaughterhouse Corner, they are on septic still. And so they're having, as failure happens, they're required to hook into the city. Because they were annexed back in.
But they've already got water, so
Correct.
they're already on the water.
Yeah.
But what about these people, say if you went further out, that have wells?
So if you went past the Petty's place,
Yeah.
well, I call it, you know where I'm talking about, the Petty's place. So if you keep going out there, yeah, they're on well and septic, and it's.
I know they have to hook up, but
As soon as
could
they
they
start failing.
continue with their water?
With their water,
And
I don't know, Riley, how long do they have once?
So if we were to extend our water main and sewer main out up Lewis River Road, they could continue to stay on a well system until that well basically had to be
Had a problem? or-
rehabilitated. They would have to, if they were within 200 feet of a water or sewer main, they would have to pay standby fees, which would be equal to the rate of a base rate of a standard connection fee. So they would be paying base rates. One thing I would like to kind of add, if we were to expand out Lewis River Road, we're looking at about $2.6 million in the water main upgrade on Lewis River Road to get that up to a 12-inch standard, so to be able to provide services. And that doesn't include a booster station, because we would have to then make that a pressure zone, because you're headed uphill pretty fast.
I was just
So-
curious about the wells and, you
Yeah,
know,
they
if-
would,
you went in that direction.
Yeah, they would be able to still utilize those wells in their private septic systems until
But
they.
they'd still have to pay.
Correct. They would have to pay standby fees. Yeah.
And I'd like to point out that that is an issue for annexation. You don't have to accept somebody who applies and they're like, I'm not willing to pay a cent more than $5 and you have to annex. No. But if they say, well, I'll give you $500,000 towards this project, all of a sudden Riley has significant amount of cash to use to leverage against grants and create opportunities, then that might make you consider annexing somebody that you wouldn't otherwise, you know, because they can provide incentives versus, yeah, there's more than just asking and yes and no. They have to be able to justify why it's in the city's interest, and if they're going to subsidize city improvements versus the city ratepayers subsidizing this expansion, that's a policy issue, and you can tell them no as many times as you want.
And you and I talked about this, Riley, or Travis. When was the last time we did annexation? 94, 90?
I'm sorry, I don't remember the answer to that number,
It was where I.
but it's been a
and
while.
I think it was 94, 96.
It was a
you guys-
significant annexation, yep.
So, but and that's why I say it's been, you know, Melissa.
Travis, we also, I think when you and I sat down, we talked about Clark County had a numbers too. Is that in this?
That's in there. So, count,
700.
It is, I mean, it's a lot because we don't have any property to get 700 houses.
it's 105 units.
Oh, 105.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
still,
I was
Yep.
there's
thinking it
still
was
not
7.
105
Yes.
spaces.
And our total county, Clark County count now is 84 units. So they expect us to grow 210%. So Cowlitz County, the 100% increase is it's consistent with what Clark County, and that's because when you have these big numbers and you run the statistics,
Right.
it looks fine, but yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I remember it being just
yeah.
absolutely ridiculous, the number that they were giving us.
Yeah.
Any questions from audience? Any other questions from council? Any direction or anything you want to see from Travis?
I would like a copy of the packet.
Actually, I would too.
Paper,
Paper, yes, please.
I actually have 2 copies with me
Perfect.
today, so grab them before you leave.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on comp plan? Appreciate your time there, Travis. All right, the time is now 8:11, and we will go back into our council
Motion to
meeting.
end meeting?
Second.
Time is now 8:11. Have a good evening, everyone.
Recording stopped.